Pastor Kori, the Associate Minister here at Orange.
And I'm Adam Seat, the lead pastor here at Orange United Methodist Church. And we thank you for watching this first episode of our second season of Table Talks.
We're really excited to have you join us this morning or this evening, whenever you're listening or watching, because we are joined today by a wonderful colleague and friend, Reverend Jennifer Moxely. And Jennifer actually serves as a pastor out at First United Methodist Church in Sikeston. Am I saying that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry. Or it's also known to many as the Fun Church, which I want to know why. And Jennifer, you're going to tell us a little bit about your ministry as we talk, but something we do want you to know is that Jennifer is mother to the world's most creative and beautiful baby genius and their hilarious rabbit.
Yes.
What's the rabbit's name? Remind me.
Walter.
Walter the rabbit. Yes, those are two things that very much shape who you are. So we want everyone to know that.
Yes, and puns. Yeah, so for years I did puns with Walter the rabbit. I think we got up to 250 something, and people would send them to me and everything. And then I had a baby and sort of lost my my creativity. The well ran dry. But if anyone has some good rabbit puns, send them my way.
I had a rabbit once. I named him Stu. Sorry. Well, we are so thankful that you've joined us today, Jennifer, and all the way halfway across the country. But tell us a little bit about your life right now in the context of COVID and your ministry role right now.
Yeah, well, let me tell you. So I am at a church so if you think about the shape of Missouri, there's a little part that sticks down. It's called the Boot Heel. So that's where I am. It's close to where I'm from. So I went to Duke Divinity School, came back home to be near family. My husband farms with his dad. And I really, really blessed, fortunate to be a part of this church. It's a really healthy, missional, focused church. I have been here about 6 years, which I don't say out loud too often because I don't want the bishop to know how long I've been here. It's a really good gig. I like it a lot. And I'm the associate. And so what I do at my kind of roles, I have 5 areas of ministry. One is, worship, leading worship. And I preach once a month. I'm a part of weekly planning, that whole thing. I'm in charge of our congregational care ministries. So all of our short-term stuff, long-term stuff, like our homebound folks and nursing home-bound folks, and our connections, so door-to-core kind of stuff, as well as all of our next generations. So everybody, children through youth, I kind of oversee that as well. And then in addition, I'm our discipleship person. So that's kind of what I've been doing I've been in that role the last 4-ish years. And have just seen it change a lot. And obviously, everybody's changing a lot with like COVID, whatnot. As we moved it was funny when I look back at my text with Kori, when we talked about this a couple months ago, we were talking about things. And I had said in May, we're just trying to figure out this hybrid thing, because we're like online, we're in person, and so that's kind of, I think we're where a lot of churches are. Just trying to figure that out, what that looks like right now, how to do groups, how to do worship, we're actually in person as well as online right now. I mean, our in-person folks, we don't have that many in person. We're definitely more online at the moment. But just, trying to figure it all out in this new normal is where that is. And Kori said, why are we called the Fun Church? So we are a 153-year-old church, and before I got here, it was all kind of rebranded in an effort to kind of shift it away from like the white country club church to just kind of change the culture a little bit, and to change. They were moving outward, moving outside the walls, trying to be more missional focused, which is where we are now. And so it was just kind of a big leap to try something totally different. and we get made fun of. We have actually been on those lists that you see that go around on the internet about like the dumbest church names. We've made those, but you don't forget it. And we have heard people say, you know, it is fun. And obviously we do all the other stuff too, but we do have a lot of fun, and it kind of makes it a little bit different, and it's a little disarming. So I like it a lot.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, thanks so much for telling us a little bit about your context and where you're at. I know.
Also, I'm in my basement right now, and it is very hot for some reason as far as the context goes.
Well, someone once said that in order for a church to grow, it has to get small. And we were hoping that you could tell us a little bit about your experience with small group ministry. You said you're over discipleship. So tell us a little bit about that small group ministry and its purpose and function and how y'all implement it. And maybe start with just why small group ministry is important.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I love that quotation, by the way. I do think that's absolutely true, that to grow, you have to get small. I mean, you have to, I think we are big enough especially in our area, we're one of the bigger churches, that people do feel kind of lost, and they do feel anonymous when they come in. And so small groups are absolutely necessary for people to feel connected, to have that connection with people, to be able to have those conversations, those deep theological conversations, because when you start talking about God, you are connecting with people on a deeper level, in a deeper way than you can really with any other thing. And we just kind of found that if people weren't kind of connected to a small group, they didn't really feel a part of something, didn't really feel a part of the church. And so we have worked really hard so we're about to do our fall launch, but last round we were at 82% of our worshiping attendance was in a growth group, and we call them spiritual growth groups, so people can know what to expect, not the size of the group, but they know what the purpose is. So that's kind of what we call them, is the spiritual growth groups. And before I kind of took it over, it was a very much informational type thing. And and it was really cool. They would always have like a menu every kind of round that said like, okay, if you want to do a Beth Moore study on Wednesdays, come here. If you want to do this on Tuesday, if you want to learn about Ephesians or whatever. And it was kind of semester-y based. And so then the next semester you take another class. And that was really cool. And I think that it was really good for our folks at that time, but it was very informational and not transformational. And so when I started doing this, I actually interviewed a bunch of people. I went to some different churches, and I'm not a big read a book person. I own lots of books. I like talking about books. I talk to other people who read books. I do better just talking to people and see what works. And so I actually went to a couple different churches in Missouri. They were all in Missouri, like within driving distance, and kind of talked about, what they did. And we kind of pulled from some different churches. And what we started with 4 years ago was a model that the Gathering in St. Louis uses, or they did use, where we actually took the scripture that was used on Sunday morning and did a deeper study with it. So every single group was doing the exact same thing. It was really weird for people. And they were like, you're making us do the same thing, and da 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 da. But it helped us get to those deeper questions, and it sort of shifted our culture a little bit into talking about God and talking about how your spiritual life affects your daily life, and really got people into sharing more about hey, here's, instead of informational about about the Bible or about this or that, people started saying like, well, here's how I read the Bible, or here's how I do this. And I remember there was one girl actually in one of my groups that said like, I have heard people say like chapters and verses, but like, what does that mean? And somebody next to her said, oh, like, and just flipped up in the Bible and said like, the big number is the chapter and the small number is the verse, and it was this like organic learning thing. And it wasn't this like informational output thing. And people were like bonding and learning together. And what we have done since then, again, I had a baby. I did not have time to like write all the curriculum like I was doing. But what we've done since then is do like studies. And we've done a couple like church-wide studies. We've a couple times we've kind of let the groups pick them themselves. But what we do is instead of like a menu, instead of saying like, okay, here, if you want to read like, Rob Bell's, whatever, join this study. It's we like, if you're interested in a growth group, then I call you and I talk you into a group. Basically is what happens. But what we have found that people don't actually sign up for things at our church. It's like, what a great idea. What a good idea. I would love to do that someday. But they're not going to like sign up for it. So we actually have to invite people. And so we ask the group leaders to invite people to their groups. And then I just straight up call people and say, hey, we have this group and it's an amazing group of people and we think you'd be awesome in it. And that's how it's grown, honestly, is by the direct ask and the direct invite. And, being able to say to people like, you've been here a while and I think you have a lot of gifts to offer and I would love to see you be a part of a group and to share what you learned with some other people. And that's been super cool to see. And what has happened in this culture shift from like informational to transformational is that our leaders are not necessarily teachers, and this is kind of what I tell them when I ask them, like, because again, I ask people to lead too. I say like, I don't need you to know things, actually. I really need you to be like, to shepherd these people. I need you to remind them about group. I need you to check on them when they're gone. I need you to pray for them. I need you to like, remember they have a surgery coming up. I need you to remember, and so it becomes this little church within a church. And it becomes this like group of people who grow together and also grow together toward God. And in that, yeah. Now I can't even remember what the question was. I'm sorry.
I love that idea of changing, not using a term like small group ministry and into growth group. It makes me think back when I was in high school. After my sophomore year, my family moved, and the church that my dad was a pastor, and so the church he was serving was a large, fast-growing church. And so I jumped into youth group, and there was like 100 kids, and I could get lost in that group, and I was having fun. But I remember my youth pastor putting me in a CD, Covenant Discipleship is what they had called it, and a small group. And that small group really got me through that whole transition of moving to a new community, a new high school. And, that's where I really began to grow. And so I think calling it, instead of small group, and putting the emphasis on spiritual growth group. I love that idea. Thank you so much for sharing that. And
it's funny that you said that, because I had somebody this week say, she was like, no offense, but I feel worse if I miss my group than I do if I miss Sunday worship. And I'm like, no, that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. Like, I want you to, she's like, because they tell me and they notice. Where have you been? What are you doing? So I love that. Yeah.
Well, I understand that you helped, you basically started a whole small group ministry, and I'm sorry to keep using that term, but essentially from scratch. And as you talked about writing so much of the curriculum and then using so many other resources, what are some of the resources or recommendations you could have for churches or for lay people how do they go about finding some of the good material to use?
That's a really good question, because as far as curriculum goes, it's like, everything is accessible now. I mean, and honestly, I know I've talked to other discipleship people who have, all these standards about, we only use things from this author and this and da 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 da. And what I found is, like, a lot of times when the groups pick it, when they're excited about it, or when a leader's excited about something, then it actually goes better than when I tell people what to do. But I usually try to give, like, a couple options and that kind of thing. And but I mean, gosh, there's so much good stuff. I mean, there really is. And even the bad stuff is good, because some of the best groups I've been in have been when we all disagreed with the author. Like finally one person was like, this is terrible. And then everyone was like, oh, thank goodness, I hate this too. And then we could talk about, well, why is this problematic? And why is this, whatever. So I don't know, that probably doesn't answer your question very well, but, we use a lot of, obviously, like Cokesbury and that kind of stuff, those studies. We've done some Right Now Media stuff. Our youth does that. Tried to get into Amplify Media. I sent that out to some of our groups, so they weren't as excited about some of those, but we're trying some new things. And I have one group that loves She Reads Truth, and they do those, and we have a group that loves the Bible Project. But I mean, there are so many podcasts, there's so many good things that people can grab a hold of, and you can do that on your own. The thing about groups is the discussion, and so honestly, I tell the leaders, and this is terrible to say, but I'm like, the curriculum is kind of secondary. I mean, I do think that new people are attracted to, like, ooh, a cool topic or whatever. It's definitely easier to get new people into something that sounds cooler. But the point is more you talking to each other and praying for each other. And, and I'll tell them, like, you're going to get, like, there will be at least one time you meet where you're going to just not do the study, and you're going to focus on a crisis that somebody has that week. And that's okay. Like, I need you to do that. So like we did pick one this round. It's a 6-week study, and we'll have 10 weeks between Labor Day and Thanksgiving. And I said, if you can do a 6-week study in 10 weeks, I will be very impressed. Because a lot of times you have to cancel, or the study takes 2 weeks, or, you don't finish it and you have to do it the next week, or sometimes you just scrap it all together because somebody's going through something and you need to pray for them, and that whole thing.
And sometimes 2020.
And sometimes 2020 happens. And yeah, it's just a thing.
Yeah, so I'm sure that has made you have to pivot a lot with small groups and how they're run and how they function. I'm sure there's been challenges and gifts along the way, but you're actually pretty familiar with online community. I know that you created a virtual community before 2020, before it was mandatory. And the Clergy Collard Project, which is a resource for women and men in ordained leadership, but focuses on women who are pastoring in across all denominations. And so I wanted to ask, in that experience of creating and cultivating an online community, and having this role as leading small groups, developing small groups, how have those two experiences overlapped in the last 7 months? How have they kind of shaped one another, or maybe they haven't? But if you could just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so real quick, Clergy Collard Project is an Instagram account, basically, where we invite women in ministry to share real life stories. And part of, my whole deal with, growth group ministry or whatever is just the sharing stories is transformative for people to be able to authentically share your life with someone else. I mean, I'm an Enneagram 4, so I don't really have like a lot of patience for small talk, I guess. Like, Tell me your deepest fears right now. But so I just really love sharing real life stories. And so a couple years ago, this kind of came about where I was kind of needing that community myself and needing a place to share what was really going on, and to have some other women be able to say like, yeah, I totally get that. I do that too. And so that's been, like you said, it's kind of created this online community where we feel this safe place to be able to say what's really happening. And I see that for sure is what develops in a church growth group, small group over time, is that you develop that trust with people and you're able to say like, yeah, this is how my life really is. Like, how are you really kind of thing. Those definitely overlap in that they give those safe places to be able to say that, kind of say, this is where I'm at right now. I can say this and know that I'm going to be loved and understood and heard. And I think that's the biggest thing for a lot of people, is just to be heard and to have a place to share their story. And it's been really, the Clergy Collar Project ride has been so fun, because it started with like mostly just my friends. And then when it started catching on to like people I didn't know, and now we have people in Canada and Sweden, and it's been amazing seeing how women in ministry especially can feel super isolated, and creating that place to be able to say, here's what's really happening in my life, and other people to say, oh my gosh, I totally understand, or I've been there, has been really, really wonderful. So, yeah. And what did you say? The challenges? Yeah. Do you want to know the challenges that they bring? They're different. I mean, I think like the small group, the growth group kind of challenges are just like anytime you get close to somebody. I mean, the whole like the church is the people kind of thing. So, it was funny. There was this one group a couple years ago, and I could not figure out like why they were always having conflict. Like, what's going on? And I was hearing from people in the group, like, oh, this didn't work out, and like the infighting kind of stuff. And I found out that the leader and one of the people who was kind of part of the conflict kind of stuff, they dated in high school, and she thought they were still dating. And he came home one time from college with a new woman who he's now married to, who was also in that group. Now they're both married with kids. It's 10 years later, 15 years later, whatever. But I'm like, yeah, maybe that's why that's not working out so well. But there's interpersonal stuff that happens that you just, you have to kind of work through. We had another group where the parents, there were two couples, and both their daughters were cheerleaders. And the cheerleaders had a fight at school, and it caused division within their group. And it was actually really beautiful how they came together and worked it out. And so like that's the challenges, is all the like real life stuff of like being the church and like having lives outside of that hour and a half that bump up against each other, and having opinions on Facebook that you don't agree with, and all that kind of stuff. I feel like that's kind of the challenges in helping people see like we love each other through this. Like we're more than that, and we can figure this out together. And I think the challenge with Clergy Collar Project has just been what I'm seeing, what I'm feeling is clergy in general are just really tired. And we're kind of overwhelmed with everything that is 2020. And so it's just kind of a hard time right now for everybody, but leaning on each other is what we can offer and what we can do.
Virtually.
Yeah.
Virtually. Yeah. Socially distanced. Yeah.
Well, without a doubt, real life creeps in, breaks in. And so even in the context of whether we're online or virtual worship or small groups like this or in person. Real life is going to break in. And that's where it's so essential, I believe, for people to have that small group, that those people you can grow together with, to work through those hard times, those hard problems, because, we're not going to grow just by watching worship. We're not going to grow just by being a part of a huge group. It's when we get down together, do the nitty-gritty work together.
And I'm like pastor person, whatever, but I learned so much from the people in the groups that I'm in. And I don't lead groups. I'm a part of two of them who are led by wonderful leaders that I appreciate. And I learn so much from the people in my group. And I'm always so thankful, for them and just the wise saints that we get to be around. And they are the group that, I was kind of sharing with them before we started filming some chaos going on in my life at the moment. And those are the people checking on me. And those are the people like, how's it going? And there have been so many times I've gone to the hospital because I heard, somebody had, an event, and I'll get there and there's already their small group, their growth group in the waiting room, which is really, really cool. Like those are the people, those end up being your people.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing some of your time with us today. This has been a real gift, and we look forward to sharing it with our church. Pastor Kori, any last words or thoughts?
Thank you, Jennifer. We're going to be thinking about you in these coming weeks as you welcome a new addition to your family, and we just really appreciate you taking some time to chat with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful. I feel like I just talked the entire time. Sorry.
That was perfect. So thanks for everybody for watching this episode, and look for next week. We'll have another one coming out. Thanks.
Thanks.